Milano-San Remo, the longest, most mind-numbing and yet somehow most heart-stopping one-day race on the calendar. Nearly 300 kilometers of espresso-fueled tension where nothing happens until everything happens all at once in the final 10 minutes. And in 2025, once again, the final chapter of La Classicissima was written not by a plucky underdog or a desperate breakaway survivor, but by Mathieu Vanderpole, cycling's answer to a Marvel superhero, as he stomped his way up the Poggio and left everyone else gasping for air. But let's get straight to the point. Just how fast did he go? What kind of numbers did this absolute mutant put out? And how in the name of Eddie Merck did Tadej Pogacar once again get left behind? What went wrong? Let's nerd out on the superhuman stats. Vanderpole is probably laughing right now. The anatomy of Poggio attack. How Vanderpole blew the race apart. Before we get into the raw numbers, let's set the scene. The Poggio di San Remo isn't a leg-breaking mountain pass. It's not even a particularly hard climb on paper. 3.7 Ks at an average gradient of 3.7%, with a few ramps that touch 8%. Your average Sunday club rider can get up it without too much trauma, so why does it explode the race to pieces every single year? Because after 285 Ks, with a peloton full of world-class racers running on fumes, the Poggio isn't a climb, it's a war zone. Positioning is everything. The margins are razor thin, the legs are screaming, and if you can surge just 2% harder than everyone else, you're gone. Enter Mathieu Vanderpole. Here's how the move went down. A furious pace into the Poggio. UAE Team Emirates, Pogacar's army of diesel engines, did their usual thing of blasting into the base of the climb at warp speed to set up an attack. Pogacar goes first, again. Tadej did what Tadej does, a huge acceleration 2 Ks from the top, but like a repeat of 2023, Vanderpole and company were glued to his wheel, waiting like a pack of wolves. The moment of truth with 650 meters to go, boom, Vanderpole launches from third wheel, putting down an earth-shattering attack that instantly puts meters into Pogacar, Wout van Aert and everyone else who dares resist. Full send on the descent. No hesitation, no looking back. Vanderpole descends like he's on a roller coaster with no brakes. By the time the chasing trio realise they've been cooked, he's already hurtling into San Remo alone. The numbers. How many watts does it take to break a Poggio? Okay, now let's get to the good stuff. The sheer horsepower Vanderpole unleashed on that attack. Thanks to some helpful power estimates from cycling analysts and real-world data from previous editions, here's what we're looking at. Peak power output, 1,150 watts in the attack. Sustained power over last 45 seconds, 850 watts. Final 90 seconds power estimate, 700 to 750 watts. Watts per kilo estimate for attack, 16 to 17 watts per kilo, very briefly. Average speed up Poggio, 37 to 38 kilometers an hour. Fastest time up Poggio, 5:45, second fastest ever, only behind himself in 2023. That is utterly absurd. For context, a well-trained amateur might hold 5 watts per kilo for a few minutes. A pro climber in a Grand Tour can hold 6 watts per kilo. Vanderpole's surge hit 16 watts per kilo momentarily. To put it another way, while your local group ride is struggling up a climb in Zone 4, Vanderpole is kicking out a power surge equivalent to a small motorcycle at the business end of a 300 Ks race. And Pogacar, the guy who normally thrives on long sustained climbing efforts, he simply couldn't respond. Why Pogacar keeps getting Poggio'd by Vanderpole? At this point, it's almost becoming a tradition. Pogacar tries, Pogacar attacks, and Vanderpole waits until the last possible moment before detonating everyone else's race. Why does this keep happening? Tade's attacks are too early. As legendary as Pogacar's, quote, full gas and hope for the best strategy is, the Poggio isn't a real climb, it's a power test. If you attack too soon, all you do is drag your rivals up the climb faster, and Vanderpole is the last guy you want to tow to the top. Vanderpole's nuclear sprint power, while Pogacar can destroy fields on an alpine pass, he doesn't have the raw explosive acceleration of Vanderpole. Once Mathieu launches, it's game over. Vanderpole's descending is insane. Even if Pogacar had somehow held the wheel for another 200 meters, he would have had to include Pogacar's crazy mission. Tadej summed it up in classic style post-race. Quote, "I tried again, but Mathieu was just too strong. Maybe next year I will attack even earlier. Spoiler, that's a terrible idea, Tadej." Vanderpole, in his usual unstated fashion, simply said, quote, "I felt good today." Yeah, we noticed. Could anyone have beaten Vanderpole? In short, probably not. But let's entertain some alternative scenarios. What if the race had been slower? A more controlled pace might have kept Alaphilippe, Garner, or Evenepoel in the mix. But it's unlikely they'd have beaten Mathieu van der Poel anyway. What if Pogacar had waited longer? If Pogacar had saved his move until the last 500 meters, he might have had more snap to match the attack. What if it rained? A wet descent could have favoured a more conservative rider. But let's be honest, Van der Poel rides like a man who doesn't know fear. Final thoughts. The Poggio is Van der Poel's playground. Mathieu van der Poel's 2025 Milano-San Remo masterclass wasn't just about numbers. It was about timing, precision, and absolute ruthlessness. He waited, he watched, and when the moment came, he went nuclear in a way that only he can. With this win, Van der Poel now cements himself as one of the greatest classics riders ever. Pogacar will have more chances, he'll keep trying and probably keep losing on the Poggio, but at this point, if Van der Poel is on the start line, the rest of the peloton better have a plan, or just hope he has an off day. Until then, welcome to Poggio, Van der Poel. So what do you think? Could Tadej ever outfox Mathieu van der Poel on this climb? Or should he just accept his fate and focus on winning Lombardia instead? Well, share your comments down below and leave a like on today's video. Subscribe if this is your first time here to stay up to date with all of the latest cycling news, cycling drama, and cycling race results.